there is no technique that would always 100% reliably give you complete control over dream content, but we definitely can influence our dreams.
So why do we dream?
I think that almost all of the things any of my colleagues would say about it's where we practice facing threats. It's where we act out our wishes. We're consolidating memories. That it's like asking, why we have waking thought. It's for everything, except that we're in this very different biochemical state where our visual system is much more active even than when we're awake. And our logic is not turned off, but it's damped down. Similarly, our language is damped down somewhat. So we're thinking about all of our usual thoughts and concerns and motivations in this very, very, very different state. And I think that's what dreams are and why they happen.
Why is it so complicated? Why isn't it? Because for me, what do I know? But for me, the body seems like a very efficient machine, right? And the bicep moves the arm. Why is it so complicated to figure out exactly why we're doing this?
Our brain is the most complex part of our body, and it's doing a bazillion things, many of them outside of your consciousness. And our dreaming brain is as turned on, even though some areas are more active and some are less active than when we're awake. So the human mind and brain are just infinitely complicated, and dreams are really the activation of all of that.
Regardless of why we dream, what benefit do we get out of it?
I think it benefits us at all levels that it ever did across the evolution of mammals, that the physical state in which it's occurring is replenishing some of our neurotransmitters that have been depleted by day. It is helping us regulate our body. So the state is doing some physical things. But then also we're just thinking about all of our usual concerns. And I believe that just like awake, it's not like all dreams are profound. There are a few people that think that every dream has an important message, but I think that's as silly as saying every thought is an important, profound one. But that just like with our waking thought, once in a while, our dream has an image or an interaction or a content to it that is really important and solves some problem in a way we haven't thought of awake, or makes us see a connection between what's going on in our emotional life right now and something from a distant past that's really why we feel that way. So I think that dreams can benefit us more frequently with understanding our emotions better, with seeing things about how we feel about people, with some kind of symbolic unconscious things. But once in a while, really practical, great ideas for your chemistry homework or the next novel you want to write, or just very, very real important daytime pursuits have occurred to people in dreams. But it's just that the majority of our dream content is just like our waking thought, kind of trivial and repetitive.
Why did dreams seem real but not real? In the sense that, I'm playing basketball, but in the crowd there's a shark and the basketball is a cake. Why is it real but not?
Because it's, especially in terms of the visual imagery, it's every bit as vivid as if it was a sight coming in through our eyes. Our visual cortex is as active as if we were really seeing these things, even though they're being generated only within our brain and they're not coming in through our eye. So everything we see is as clear as if we were really seeing it. And to a lesser extent, sometimes sounds we hear and movements we feel as realistic, although for those other senses, it's not necessarily as completely vivid as if we were awake. But then the content is not coming from what's in the real external world. It's coming from thoughts and memories, and perhaps even just from some random electrical signals hitting the visual cortex and other areas. So when we see something awake, it's going to correspond to something very realistic there. And in our dreams, we're seeing this thing as vividly as a real thing, but much of the time, because it's coming from not real sources, it's very surreal or nonsensical or impossible.
Do we dream every night? Are we always dreaming? Because for me, I only remember a few of them. Like once a week, I'll be like, oh, I had a dream today.
Yes, but you're very right to use the word remember as the key aspect there, because Freud and a lot of the old theorists thought that we only dreamed things that we remembered. So he had all kinds of theories about what activated us to dream, on the assumption that we didn't dream very often, or some people dream much more than others. But in the 1950s, when rapid eye movement sleep was discovered as this phase in which every 90 minutes or so the brain reactivates, and in the early days, they could just tell it looked as active as if we were awake, even though we obviously weren't. Now that EEG's gotten much more sophisticated, we can see that there's as much brain waves total, but they're different types, and they're coming from different areas of our brain, more and less. So it's as active as when we're awake, but different. So as soon as rapid eye movement sleep was discovered to be happening every 90 minutes, they started waking people up from it. And if you awaken somebody out of a REM period, they almost always remember a dream. And if you awaken them out of any other sleep stage, it's rare. So we now know that most people are basically dreaming about 5 times a night if you're sleeping. It's just not making it into long-term memory. Basically, you remember a dream if you awaken fairly quickly and suddenly out of rapid eye movement sleep. And if you pass back into any other sleep stage, it never gets transferred into long-term memory, which isn't turned on.
Why would we dump the memory though?
It's not always necessary that an experience be remembered and retold to yourself over time for it to have an effect on you. If you're having beautiful dreams all night, you may wake up in a much better state of consciousness, having been sort of healed by those experiences, even if you're not remembering them explicitly. And definitely bad content may spill over into the next day. So they may influence our state of mind, or also people report some creative breakthroughs coming in dreams, but they also sometimes report that they've been working on a problem, they're stuck, they can't get it, and then the next morning the answer is just there when they wake up. And I don't believe that all of those are necessarily forgotten dreams, but I very much believe that at least some of them are, because when I was interviewing people about creative problem-solving dreams, a few of the accounts would tell me this story of trying to solve some problem, then having it there in the morning, but as they went to carry it out and act on it, they'd get this uncanny deja vu, wait a minute, I've done this before, and then a dream memory would kind of flash back into consciousness. Oh, I knew how to do this morning because I dreamed about doing it.
It's interesting, right? You do always hear people talk about, anecdotally, the idea, oh, it came to me in a dream.
My book, The Committee of Sleep, is almost nothing but examples of it came to somebody in the dream and they woke up and they clearly remembered the dream and they got up and started writing this novel with the main character they dreamed about. Or the most famous example is Kekule and the benzene ring, at a time when all known molecules were some kind of straight line and side chain going off the straight line chemicals. He knew what the atoms in the benzene molecule had to be, but we didn't have the super microscopes that can just look in and see the structure back then. So he was trying to arrange the atoms to make this molecule in a way that made sense as a structure that would actually happen and stay together. And after he'd been working on this, he dozed off and he said that he saw atoms gambling in front of him was his term. And the atoms began to link up and make snakes, he said, but clearly atoms making the snake. And then he said that he saw one snake reach around and take its tail in its mouth. And he woke up and realized that benzene had to be a closed ring rather than a straight line with side chains. And so that was the first molecule that had ever been discovered that was a closed ring. Now all of organic chemistry is multiple closed ring atoms. So the dream showed him what the structure had to be. And what's very typical of dream breakthroughs is the answer is not the conventional wisdom. You have to think outside the box to get at it. And that's definitely in that Kekulé example. And the other thing is that any problem where vividly visualizing it helps, that visual arts get even more help from dreams than novels and poetry and music, which all can. But visual artists very often see their next painting in a dream.
Can we control them in any way? Do we seem to be able to influence our dreams?
Yes. There is no technique that would always 100% reliably give you complete control over dream content, but we definitely can influence our dreams. And the kind of most famous version that I'll get to in a minute is lucid dreams, where you realize that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. And that ever since the movie Inception, that's gotten a lot of press. But I actually first want to say that there's something that's much easier to do than that by way of influencing your dreams, which we call dream incubation. It's named for the Greeks had these temples that they went to try to have particular dreams. They were usually healing dreams that they were wanting. But the modern technique is just that it can just be a content. It can be as simple as, my girlfriend lives across the ocean and I'd like to have a dream of having her here right now, even though I don't really get to see her for 2 months. I want a vivid dream about being with my girlfriend, or I love my flying dreams. I don't have them very often. I want to be flying in my dream. It can be just content that you want to dream about, or it can be a question. Why do my spouse and I keep having these repetitive thoughts, arguments? What else could I do differently? So you have a topic, a question, or a problem. And as you're falling asleep, you tell yourself, tonight I want to dream about X. Tonight I want to dream about X. And just make it a simple phrasing because it's likelier to get remembered. Our memory's on, but not as sharp as when we're awake. So make it something simple that can get through to the dream as a phrase. And then because our dreams are so much visual than anything else, try to form an image that corresponds to the question. And, if you're trying to dream about a particular person, you would just picture them. An artist wanting to see their next picture might just picture a blank canvas and sort of with something about to form on it as they're falling asleep. So simple phrase, simple image, just telling yourself either a sort of willpower like I'm going to dream about this tonight, or you can phrase it as asking your dreaming mind, please send me a dream about this. So those are the variations. And in one of my studies with college students where they'd picked out a problem to solve with this technique, in the course of 1 week of doing this, 50% of them dreamed about their topic. And then interestingly, some of the 50% that didn't have a dream on their topic that week didn't remember any dreams that week. So a lot of the failures are just like, I don't know what I dreamed. And then lucid dreaming is much harder to do unless you're one of the rare people that already has a lot of dreams where you're dreaming. When people first hear about lucid dreaming, knowing you're dreaming while the dream is ongoing, they often think of wanting to do that sort of for some practical application, like, oh, then I could dream about my girlfriend who I'm not with, or then I could dream about flying more, or then I could dream the answer to a homework problem. But it's actually much, much harder to make yourself realize you're dreaming. But you can do two things. One is almost the same kind of incubation. You just fall asleep going, tonight in my dream, I want to realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dream, I want to realize I'm dreaming. And if you've ever had a lucid dream, or if you picture the moment that suddenly you realize this was a dream, if you've never had one, picture the scene in Inception where the architect is getting that this is a dream for the first time. Just sort of try to picture what that moment is like, whether you're reliving a dream of yours or whether you're reliving a movie dream or just the concept. So you do that as you're falling asleep at night, much like the other incubation. And the other thing you do is you practice daytime reality checks, which are, first of all, just periodically through the day, you ask yourself, could this possibly be a dream right now? Because you always feel like, of course, this is waking reality when you're awake, but you feel that way in most dreams too. So you take the question really seriously and you ask, could this possibly be a dream? Just in the most abstract way possible. And then you just look around and try to notice if there is anything strange or implausible going on around you.
Right.
Yes, do the doors look like doors? Are there walls around you just check that everything looks realistic. And then you have one or two tasks that you try doing that there are lots that work for most people, but there's nothing that works for everybody. So you individualize this. A couple of the really common ones are that most people report that they can't read normally in their dreams. Clocks are another thing. Most people find that if they see a clock in their dreams, again, any strange thing, they can't even read numbers on it, or it has some numbers, but they don't make sense as, it's 41:52 is the time.
Yeah.
And then yet one more is light switches do not work normally in most people's dreams. So you just find any of those examples or something else that you've just noticed is always off in your dream world. And the idea is that you do this regularly awake, and that anything we practice by day, especially a new task that we're learning to make ourselves do, is very likely to show up in our dreams. So that's that. The combining those two things, the self-suggesting at bedtime that you're going to have a lucid dream, and checking whether you might be dreaming repetitively by day. Doing those both consistently is the best technique to have your first lucid dream if you've never had one, or to increase your rate of lucid dreams if you only have them very rarely. But the typical person who's not having them could do that for weeks and weeks and would be lucky then to have one.
Do dreams have meaning? Like, is there a deeper meaning to them?
Yes, I think all dreams have meaning in the most casual sense. Again, I really like to compare questions about dreams to questions about waking thought. And do all of your waking thoughts have meanings? In the broad sense, they have some meaning. Most of them are not profound. I think the same is true about dreams, that you can track dreams to being about some real concern we have. So I think that when you think about what is this dream about, that in the really casual sense, any dream, you can kind of see connections to things it means about things going on in your life. But in the stronger sense, I think, just like with our waking thoughts, that only a few dreams are deeply meaningful, really, really deserve a lot of our attention, and there will be something powerful to be learned there. And I think, fortunately, that most of those announce themselves, that that big dreams that are going to be very important to us don't feel exactly like other dreams, that they either jump out and we see that, oh my God, I just dreamed something that would actually make my next novel, or I just dreamed doing an interaction with my spouse very differently and it came out well in the dream. Maybe I should try that awake.
Is it meaningful kind of in the symbolic sense. Like, I dreamed that I was walking in water, so my subconscious is trying to send me a message that I need to dive deeper into my subconscious thoughts. Or is it a symbolic meaning? The way that some people would maybe interpret dreams to have a hidden meaning of something else.
I think that can be where along a continuum from very literal, you see or do something in the dream that's really telling you about that thing or that interaction, or maybe I should say that exact thing to my spouse. Maybe I should approach this chemistry problem exactly like I saw it, to kind of lightly symbolized in a way that's kind of an obvious symbol as soon as you start thinking about it, to some sort of much more deeply transformed things. I think that dreams can have very literal or very symbolic. It takes associating and figuring out what the symbol is.
What's usually like when somebody has a dream is like, how long is this thing happening? Like, if a dream seems 10 minutes in my mind, is that 10 minutes of actual dreaming, or am I dreaming that it took 10 minutes?
Yeah, that is a question that researchers have asked. And the answer is that it's certainly not perfectly related, because occasionally people report that they had a dream that felt like it went on for 2 weeks or something, and obviously it didn't. They've been asleep for 8 hours that night, and they've not had a REM period that was longer than 20 minutes. But what they do find is that if somebody recalls just a very short little sequence versus a longer sequence, that it on average, they kind of map onto real time. Because each rapid eye movement sleep period gets longer through the night. They happen every 90 minutes, but the first one's really short and the next one's a little longer. And the last one is the very longest and is the one we're likeliest to remember, because you're going to wake up at the end of the night in a way that you may not through the night. So the subjective duration looks like it's at least loosely related to how long it took you to dream it, but definitely not perfectly.
That's pretty much all the questions that we got. Is there anything else you think that we missed, or
No,
anything else?
It's been interesting chatting with you about it.